Okay, but hey everyone, welcome to episode 2 of Po-Litics. I'm your host, Sipo Ho Zungu, or as close friends and family like to call me, Po. And with me today, I have a special and beautiful guest. With me today, her name is Ashira Singh.
Hello.
So, if you haven't watched episode 1, I encourage you to go watch episode 1 because this continues from there. But for those of you who have watched the first episode, you would know that we did a rather extensive discussion around, does South Africa deserve a better breed of politician? And we came to the conclusion that yes, it does deserve a better breed of politician. But as a country, knowing that we deserve a better breed is only half the job. We got to know what this better breed looks like. What does the values look like? What does the principles look like that guides this better breed of politician? What are the characteristics of each of these politicians? And so today's episode is that very same, answering that very half of the question, is profiling the better breed of this politician. And while we may be profiling it, this is not intended to be a wish list of sort, but this profiling, stipulating what the values are, stipulating what the principles and the characteristics, is transcending the wish list aspect of it, but it's more of a demand, a public demand from ordinary South Africans. Because in the first episode, we did a call out asking for each of you who watched it to comment on wherever you saw the video as to what you feel those values or characteristics or even principles should be. And we'd like to thank each and every one of you that took the effort to contact or comment either on YouTube. Some of you commented on Facebook, some did so on TikTok, some even who knew me personally decided to reach out on WhatsApp personally. So we thank each and every one of you for the contributions that you've made. It has played a large and significant role in what we've drafted for today. So, like I said, it's not a wish list. It is a demand that I believe every ordinary South African has. Okay, so before we get into the aspect of listing out or fleshing out these values and principles and characteristics, I think we ought to just take it a few steps back. And that's why I have today with me Ashira. So, Ashira, a few questions. This is not going to be, this episode isn't entailed to be an interview style. I am going to ask you a few questions at the beginning, but then from there on, it's just going to become a conversation between a non-politician and a politician, or a politician.
Representative of the common public.
Yes.
The public.
Yes. You are their representative. You today are their spokesperson.
It's a big job.
I think a lot of people, most South Africans do think alike. So you'll be surprised how many think the same way you do in regards to politics, at least.
Let's hope so.
Okay, so tell me, first questions first. How interested are you in politics?
It's an interesting question. For many years of my life, I've run away from politics because it just, it felt quite confusing. And it felt quite, it's hard to know what to trust, what not to trust. It's hard to know what to take at face value. And I think politics, it can be so complicated. It can be so complex. There's so many different dimensions to it. So it was a bit easier to ignore up until very recently, where it's in my face every day. Not in a bad way, though.
Okay, that's good to hear. I think actually most South Africans, I mean, even some politicians themselves don't understand.
Yeah, I think when it's explained well, then it's easier to understand, and you can feel like the interest builds when you can understand it a little bit better. But when there's so much like complexity involved, and it gets confusing and it can be frustrating, then it's easier to kind of just turn away and say, it's not for me, you know. And I guess there's some people that it's not for, and one might just know what the basics of politics are, and then there's some people who follow it a bit more, and I don't know, I think I straddle the line there sometimes.
Okay. Have you ever voted before?
I have, every time since I was eligible.
Okay. Why do you choose to vote?
It's important to make my voice heard, and to have a say in those things, and to participate and to be part of it. I always think of, like, sometimes if you, when there are two sides to a problem, right? Say that we're thinking in binaries and we say there's a yes and a no. And if I choose not to participate, automatically one side kind of gets leverage. I don't know if that makes sense. But sometimes your silence is, say, for example, if people are speaking out against something, your silence is, like, inadvertently you are supporting the thing that is being spoken up against if you're not doing something about it, if you're not voicing your opinion.
Sometimes speaks louder than words.
Yeah, and maybe you don't think, maybe you're not pro whatever it is people are speaking out against, but because you keep silent, it counts against the people who are trying to bring about change. So I think that if everyone has a mentality of it's too confusing, it's not going to make a difference, if everybody thinks like I'm powerless to make a change, we're going to all sit in our little corners and nothing is going to happen. I can't control whether other people vote, but I can control whether I go and vote, and consistently just be kind of obedient with that.
Okay. That's a good way of looking at it. We're going to return to the part of the significance of a single vote a little later on in the episode. But to continue with the brief interview part of the discussion here is, do you trust politicians?
I might trust one politician.
No points for guessing who that politician.
No points at all. One or two politicians.
One or two.
That is a hard question, because to trust someone you have to really know them. And that's why I say, like, I trust one politician because there's one politician I know and that I can see this is kind of the way they carry things out, or do they, engage in politics.
Politics.
I'm botching this. Yeah, some of it sometimes just feels too far away. And I think it's hard with politics because a lot of politics sometimes is like the one person making the other person look bad, or the one person speaking out against the other person, pointing fingers, and there's a lot of blame. And so I think it can be hard, and sometimes it doesn't always feel like, I don't like, the politicians are not always accessible, or and not just accessible, but, and I think there's responsibility from my end to keep up with those things. So I think, like we said, we're asking someone who is not super clued up about politics. But yeah, that's a hard question. It's overall, I don't know. I don't have a lot of confidence in politics or politicians, or yeah.
I think you made a vital point in the fact that you said you trust one or two because you know them and you know the kind of values they stand for, or you know the kind of person they are. So it makes it easier for you to trust them and the kind of politics they follow. And I think and it also brings up a vital point that it requires, I think, both parties to come to the dance floor or the tango, because in as much as you do need the politicians to become a bit more accessible to the public, I think the public also needs to kind of, as you like to say in sports terms, get off the bench and onto the field.
Yeah.
Because politicians can only come so far. The public still has to meet them.
Yeah.
Even if it's not halfway, but you got to meet somewhere at some point. But yeah, I think you're completely valid in your answer in saying that it is difficult to trust politicians. I mean, politicians don't trust politicians. So I mean, imagine someone that's not a politician. How do you expect them to trust one?
It's just a whole lot of weird power dynamics, and
it is it is one of the environments that can make you, as the young generation likes to say, jaded.
Jaded. Do the
Yeah.
young generation still say jaded? I feel like
I
Gen
don't
Zs
know.
have a different term for it now.
I don't know, but that was the last. That was the last. I updated my slang, my lingo. Jaded, because I mean, you could look someone in the face and they'll tell you A, and virtually 5 minutes later they'll go and do B. I mean,
I think that's what you like, that word trust again, like you said, like or you highlighted that the people I said I trust is because I know them and know their values. And in any relationship, not even a politician, if you look at how trust is built, again, going back to the word relationship, it's through relationship. And relationship doesn't form through like, I'm just following you on Instagram. There kind of does have to be some engagement, which can be difficult, can be hard to attain. Yeah.
Okay. Do you think, last question, and then we'll get into our discussion part. Do you think politicians understand ordinary South Africans and the struggles they go through and the challenges they face on a day-to-day basis? Do you feel like politicians on all levels, whether it's your local councillor or your member of provincial legislature or even a parliamentarian, do you feel like they understand ordinary people?
I think I'm making an assumption here, but I think at different levels the understanding might change. Like I would hope that the local politicians do understand the people, because they should be in the wards or the municipalities that they're serving, and should be sharing lived experiences with some of their people. They should be more engaged in the community, so they should understand.
Okay.
I guess it might be different if it's provincial or national, where you're a little bit more removed. I can imagine being at national, possibly you might forget what it's like to be on the ground. I could be wrong. You can correct me here.
Yeah, it's your opinion.
This is me. I don't know. I'm here to learn about politics.
We welcome all opinions. It's a safe space for a discussion.
But I think the more you are out of that environment, the easier it is to forget. I'm thinking of like, how do adults forget what it's like to be a teenager and not understand teenagers, because we were all there once. But how we forget is when we're out of that, we lose the sort of that connection to the life stage or the people or the community or whatever it is that we're looking at. And I think it can be easy to, like, you turn your eyes to, this is what life looks like now, or very complex question, and hard to generalize that answer as well. I'm not saying all politicians are like this. I think maybe there are some people who are still in touch. Now, what do you think? Do you think politicians understand the needs of ordinary South Africans?
Yeah, I mean, I think it is a complex one, but I think it's a question that has a dual answer. Yes, I think some politicians do understand what ordinary South Africans go through, but then also at the same time, no, there are some politicians that are completely disconnected. Because I mean, you could have, I know in our municipality, Port Huza, the expectation is that a ward councillor should be residing in the ward that he's elected in. While it's not necessarily a legislative requirement, but for the sake of there being that sense of contact or that sense of being able to be, reachable to the public or accessible to the public, it would be preferred that that councillor reside in the ward that he or she is meant to be representing. But unfortunately, you do have cases where, and I know this is in many municipalities, but I'm going to use our one for one example. You've got a councillor who is meant to be a ward councillor in a ward that's on one end of the municipality. I won't mention names or the locations, but then only to find out that he resides on the other end of the municipality, ironically across the road from me, in two very vastly different communities.
People just have to know where you live, that's all.
Yeah, if those that know will automatically know exactly who I'm talking about. But I mean, you've got a ward councillor that needs to answer to the needs and the challenges of a community that he doesn't reside in. So he would not know what it's like to have to deal with the fact of when there's a water outage. I mean, he may have experienced it at one stage, but like if the water goes out in that area, I can guarantee you he or she would put in a lot more effort to have the water restored, or at least have a water tanker delivered, if he or she is experiencing that same lived challenge. Whereas if they're detached from that location and they're living somewhere else, this community could have no water, but where he or she is residing could have water. And so there may be less motivation to at least address the challenge or the issue that the community is facing. So yeah, some politicians do understand the challenges and struggles of ordinary South Africans. Some, unfortunately, are so heavily disconnected that no, they don't.
I also had a thought that like sometimes power creates that disconnect or creates that it's not that you don't understand or that you don't know, but it's easy now to turn a blind eye, like you said, like because this person is a bit more comfortable, and it becomes like, and maybe it's going into the rest or like the discussion that you're going to have later, but if someone is going into politics and they become more self-serving than community serving, then it's not that you don't know what people are going through. It's that because it doesn't affect you and you're a bit more self-serving, you're thinking, here, my power, my comfort, my whatever it is, anything that related to you, it's easy to ignore what people are going through.
I think there's a podcast that I like watching, among many. An individual by the public figure by the name of Penuel, the Black Pen. And I think he, and we might even touch on this a little later on, but he makes a statement whereby he feels like, in his perspective, politicians are heavily disconnected from society in itself and the challenges that society faces. Because his thinking is this, that if you're a public servant and your job is to oversee all the various aspects and features that government provides to the public, such as education, such as healthcare, such as the various things, then you should also be a patron of that. You should be, participating in those. What he was trying to say is that you can't have a politician who sends their children to private school when it's very evident that the public schooling system is failing dismally. Because then, if he or she's child is going to a private school, there isn't much incentive to really put in effort to fix the public school. Whereas there would be a lot more motivation behind every single public rep if their children went to public schools. I think the public schooling system would have been beefed up dramatically if we had to say every single public rep had to have, if they have a child, their child has to go to a public school. And once public schooling system has come to the same level as private, then I think we can allow them to.
Quite extreme.
It's extreme, but I think at this point
I
in
hear
time,
you.
I mean, if politicians at this point in time have done so little, we've seen the deterioration of everything that they've touched. That I think you kind of have to force them in such a way to experience the same challenges. I mean, likewise, most parliamentarians are on private healthcare. So when they need to use the hospital, they're going to a private hospital. The service at a private hospital is 1,000 miles far better, far more superior than the standard at a government hospital. Whereas if they had to go through that lived experience of ordinary South Africans who have to use public health care, I'm pretty sure there would be a much greater incentive for them to get the healthcare fixed and to get it fixed quicker. Because I think while our country does have problems, and our problems are not unique to us, the problems that we face are problems that even developed countries face, first world countries face. But I think with them, they've gotten to a place where they can solve those issues much quicker because of the resources and the expertise that they have than we do, whereas we're still in our developing phase. So we ought to be putting in as much as effort and energy and focus into the things that need to be fixed and need to be developed properly. So, I mean, to his point that public servants should use public service facilities and not private, I think it's a valid point. At least it will ground a politician, and it will help a politician to experience the same challenges that ordinary South Africans have to face. And if they've experienced those challenges, then there's greater incentive for them to address the issues because there's a first-hand experience with the issues. And there's more incentive to address those issues quickly because they know that if they've got to use those facilities, they will not want to use the facilities if it's in a dismal state.
You can maybe cut this out later if it's not appropriate for the podcast.
Okay.
But it's making me think of that time that we were talking about resources being used to help a politician feel a bit more comfortable in their community after an incident that occurred and they were being threatened by the community. But it wasn't because of something they were fighting for. It was because of something they did that aggravated the community.
Exactly.
And the conversation was about should we now be using municipal funding to pay for security and protection for this particular politician, which is very similar to what you're saying. Like if our politicians are comfortable, when you're in comfort, there's no use the word motivation to make a change. Like if we think of if I think with human behavior, people only change when there's a certain level of discomfort, and that discomfort directly impacts them. People are less motivated. They don't actually, there's no need to change if everything is okay, if everything is good, if everything is comfortable, and it doesn't force you to change.
Okay. I mean, yeah, it's valid. It's very valid example that you use.
Are you thinking about being uncomfortable as a politician?
I mean, I've been in my spaces of discomfort. Every time the water goes out in my area, I'm experiencing the same water outage that everyone else experiences. But also, I think if you're a politician and the people in your own community don't want you there, I mean, surely you should get the hint and decide to step down and give it to someone who would most likely the community may feel may do a better job. But anyway, to continue with what we're doing, because we're obviously here to profile the ideal politician, in as much as we know the flaws of our current politicians, I think we ought to move from the negatives and start focusing on the positives that we can enforce in the future. Maybe not enforce, but at least integrate into our thinking and cultures. So, what we're trying to do in today's politics is help citizens understand that they're the ones who actually have the power. Like in the sense, when you look in the business, in economics, in the business world, when there's a demand, or when the public creates a demand for something, there's always bound to be a business or an entrepreneur that will rise to the occasion with the supply. And unfortunately, right now, in our political sphere, it's not so much supply meeting demand. It's more demand meeting the supply. So it's like there's this massive supply of politicians. It's like, here's the options you have. There's no other options. Now you have to choose from here. Whereas it should be the other way around, it should be that the public saying this is what we want. We will not participate in this program of voting if we are not given the kind of leaders that we expect. And they should be following these sort of principles. They should be following these sort of values. And then the institutions should then adhere or listen to those demands and then supply the correct. Because the reason why I think it's vital for the public to create this demand is because there's ordinary South Africans out there, upstanding, upright individuals who would like to get involved in the space of government, in the space of politics, who probably have the capabilities to get involved in politics, but unfortunately will choose not to simply because their level of morality versus the morality that's currently seen in the environment is juxtaposed to each other. You've got upstanding, upright citizens on the outside of politics, and you've got these, for the lack of softer words, degenerates, corrupt individuals in the political sphere. And that environment has been so saturated with these corrupt individuals that people just automatically associate corruption and politics in one. Whereas politics is neither corrupt nor it cannot be corrupted. It's the people that can be corrupted. And so we need to help the public understand that if they create a demand, it will at some point in time filter out the bad ones and filter in the good ones.
I have a question.
Okay, let's go for it.
What does creating a demand look like?
Well, that's what we're going to discuss today. If the public can come out and say that, hey, if someone's going to stand in this ward, or if someone's going to be a councillor in our municipality, or if someone's going to be a parliamentarian representing wherever and whoever, then we as the public will only choose to vote for these individuals if they follow or if they fall in line with the values that we believe in, if they fall in line with the principles that we follow. Because right now we're just being given options, and these politicians follow whatever values or principles they want. And as a public, we're now forced to do so. Whereas if the public can come forward, whether individually, whether if communities organize themselves and say that, listen, if anyone wants to stand in this community and represent us, this is what we want. This is what we expect from you.
Someone has to take leadership of that, though.
Someone does. In every.
So I'm trying to conceptualize what it would look like practically.
Let's look at it in this sense. I'm going to use a more localized example. So in our municipality, in Kotakuza, there's been a sudden increase in the number of ratepayers associations. There's been a sudden increase in the number of civic bodies. Obviously, each of these bodies are led by one single person who is then surrounded by a committee, a committee of members. But at the end of the day, that committee represents a constituency. And normally those constituencies represent very specific localities. For example, if we were to use Blythedale, where I'm from, we have a committee that oversees only daily affairs or ratepayer related issues of the community of Blythedale. Now, Blythedale is organized. Blythedale can then come forward and say, we have a total of 500 individuals who are eligible to vote, who are registered to vote, who are willing to vote, provided that the right candidate is provided to us. That very same body, that very same organization, Blythedale as a whole, can come forward and say, here's our memo. The person you put here needs to follow these values, needs to abide by these principles, and needs to showcase these characteristics. If they do that, because listen, hanging votes or using votes as leverage, it's like using money in business. Money in business is a good tool to advance your business. So if you want to advance your public's interests and what the public wants as a whole, then you're going to use your vote. Your vote is the biggest tool to leverage what you want. And if a community can come forward and say, we have 500 votes that we can give to whoever provided that they meet these requirements, they meet these demands that we're putting forward, I can guarantee you will find it's inevitable. A political party will climb the highest mountain. They will scale the deepest sea to find a candidate that will meet that criteria, because parties are after votes. Votes give them representation so they can further push their manifesto points and their agendas. But at the end of the day, if people understand that their vote is their leverage tool, or their tool that they can use to leverage for what they want, parties will oblige.